This woman was Israel's special envoy, and what she just said about the future of the West, jihadism, and anti-Semitism should terrify you because it's already happening.
As I said, you have 2 New York Times best-selling books. The one most people, I'm sure, are familiar with is Israel, A Simple Guide to the Most Misunderstood Country on Earth. So today, as we sit here, in May of 2025, what is it that is still so misunderstood?
How much time do we have? Is the answer.
Basically.
Is the answer to that. So it's a great question, and that's the reason I named my first book, A Simple Guide to the Most Misunderstood Country on Earth, because I wanted this to be a conversation. Because is Israel the most misunderstood country on earth? No. Do you all know the governance system of Denmark? No. Nobody does. But the thing about that I wanted to point out is that Israel is the country that people know nothing about, yet that they're obsessing over it in a very disproportionate way. And that was something that I was able to identify when I moved to America as an actress, a producer, a writer. I was Israeli, and I started coming to America and talking to people, and I'm like, wow, you have no idea what Israel is, right? But you're very opinionated about it, which is a very interesting concept. And that was why I was able to identify this years ago as this extra Jewish, which isn't political, and it's not about policies, and it's not about politicians, it's about good old anti-Semitism, which we're going to get to later on. So there are a lot of things that are misunderstood about Israel. You can talk about the fact that people don't understand that the Jews have originated from, Judea. The Jews are indigenous to the state of Israel. They don't understand that Israel is literally a refugee state that was decolonized from Great Britain. So not only it's not a colonialist state, it was decolonized from England. They don't understand how liberal and progressive it is. They don't understand that there are 21% Arab, Israeli, Palestinian citizens that have equal rights within Israel. If you tell them that they don't understand that there's, again, I don't want to be offensive, but they don't understand that there's never been a Palestine. Not that there shouldn't be, but there just never has been. And when you say this to some certain people in the population, their mind just goes, like they don't even know how to process that, right?
She's making some outstanding points, like boom, 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 one right after the other. And it's all on this bedrock point. And that is that people have opinions about Israel and they know nothing about it. You ask them, were you ever there? Do you know anyone that ever lived there? Have you spoken to any Israeli Arabs that have lived there to find out actually what their experience is? Nothing. But their opinions are so strong, they'll go into the street and yell and scream on top of their lungs with absolute anger.
They don't understand the most basic stuff about Israel that is more true to the younger generation that get their information on social media, on TikTok, and worse. So a lot of things that people don't understand about Israel as a country, as I'm sure a lot of you know and have been frustrated by over and over again, which is why I wrote my first book, because I'm like, it's not really a book, it's an ammunition box. So just take it and use it, which a lot of people do, and it's great. But I think to this conversation with us, all of us that are, you're well versed in all of that. I think one of the most important things that people don't understand is that what's happening now is not Israel's problem. This is not Israel's problem. It's not the problem of the Jews. It's not even just the problem of the Middle East. What's happening right now is nothing short of a cultural conflict that if we don't wake up in the West to understand that that is what's happening, we're going to be screwed and not too far down the line. So here's the thing. Israel is on the front line of a worldwide fight, right? It's a fight between liberal values, whether liberal democracies or whatever it is that we hold dear, things that we see as self-evident, human rights, women's rights, everything that the water we swim in, right? To us, it's very obvious that I'm equal to you. Like, where is the question there, right? When I moved here as a progressive Israeli, I was very surprised and disheartened to see that a lot of Americans don't understand the culture in the Middle East. And they superimpose what it is that they think of American culture into the Middle East, thinking that it's the same. And to an Israeli, right? And again, I'm going to say things here that I don't necessarily say out all the time in the open, but I feel like in this room, and I know it's broadcast, so Two, and it's whatever. We can handle it. So even for a very progressive Israeli, right? My family is from a kibbutz, like Israeli Air Force, and so on and so forth. If you're Israelis, you know what that means. It was very clear to me that some cultures don't just want the same things that we do. And that's something that's very difficult for progressive Americans to understand, okay? So knowing what the Middle East is, I understood that there's a bigger problem here, and that problem is called jihadism. That problem means that there are some mothers, okay, that are happy if their child goes and kills Noah Argamani's friends at a party.
Now, this is extremely difficult, almost close to impossible for a healthy Western woman to understand, especially a healthy Western mother. What mother in their right mind would want their child's life to be given up, to be killed? But if you listen to the recordings from October 7th, you will hear it. You will hear the celebration of a mother when her son says, I just murdered 10 Jews with my hands. Understanding, that her son may be giving up his own life in the process of doing this because he was in Israel at that time. And we have to realize that there are mentalities way beyond the scope of anything we would ever fathom. Which, by the way, is what we call evil. And thank God we can't relate to evil very well, but we have to understand that evil exists.
It's a good thing. It's a celebratory thing. And if their son gets killed doing that, that's a great thing to celebrate. That is a realization that we need to understand this in America. Okay? We need to understand that that is the kind of culture that we're dealing with. And it's not a culture that can be appeased by land or by any. There's no two-state solution conversation happening around that culture. There is a Sharia law conversation that's happening around that culture that says that if a woman was raped, she needs to bring 3 male witnesses to prove that she was raped. And if she can, then she's the adulterer and she's going to get stoned. But she can also redeem herself by marrying her rapist. That's the kind of culture that we're dealing with. Now, here's the thing. I refuse to partake in people that are gaslighting you, saying that you're Islamophobic if you say that. I refuse. And I'll tell you why. Because the Middle East understands this better. You know who understands what I'm saying right now? Saudis, exactly. The Jordanians. Any country in the Middle East that outlawed the Muslim Brotherhood, that outlawed Al Jazeera to some extent, that understands that culture is dangerous for them too. And there are a lot of countries in the Middle East that understand this. So, and that particular culture is also not interested in Israel. They're interested in Belfast and in Los Angeles and anywhere and everywhere. That's the mindset. So when you talk about what's misunderstood about Israel, yeah, obviously people don't understand anything about Israel, right? We know this. But if you zoom out of it, the bigger problem here is that we have not communicated properly to the masses that this is their problem too. And by doing that, we're leaving the progressives and the women and the LGBTQ plus community of the Arab world in the Middle East, we're leaving them out and hanging them out to dry. Okay? So that is the one thing that I want people to really get, and it's something that we need to take on as a educational, super important thing to educate the public. There is an entire region that needs to be transformed. It needs to be transformed from the inside out. And sadly, right now, what we're seeing is that particular culture has more fans and supporters on college campuses in America than it does in the Middle East. And that is something that is on each and every one of us.
Who would have ever thought that jihadism would have worldwide support? That's the state of where the West is today. Here's a continuation.
So you're talking about education, college campuses.
Yeah.
You spend a lot of time on college campuses.
I do. I have for years.
So what is your focus on college campuses? What is your concerned about college campuses, and are they as bad as we would think by watching the encampments and all the demonstrations and the way they're reported in the media?
Again, it's a great question. So two ways to look at it that are important. Number one is the broad public in America hate the encampments, all right? So first of all, you can calm down. We can be, it's actually okay. It's actually better than we think. 71% of Americans, left, right, center, whatever, they are against these encampments. The American people intuitively understand that these are not positive people, that this is not a positive agenda, that there's something else at play here. They get it. They don't want it. They don't like it. It was very well embodied in the SNL sketch in which they're sitting and talking about it, and the parents of the college kids, and they go, "Oh my God, I'm so proud of my child," that they're standing up, and he goes, no, not my child, but no, not my child. They don't like it. So that's a very, very good thing. But here's the thing to understand. College campuses, what's happening right now on college campuses is the tip of the iceberg of a worldwide war that has been waged against us for 30 years. And the college campuses in America have been strategy, not a goal, all right? So what is happening is that about 30 years ago, Israel's enemies understood that they can't take her down militarily. They can't. They understood correctly that they need to shift their strategy from military to geopolitical. And they aimed at college campuses because they wanted to go after the hearts and minds. I know, hope is here. We've been in the trenches for a long time, right? They realized that they need to transform the way that they fight this war over the hearts and minds of young American voters. All right? They created an entire strategy that is built on the same language as South Africa. So branding Israel an apartheid state, branding Israel a pariah state, and dismantling the state of Israel. And the strategy to do this was through college campuses. Now, I've been talking about this for 20 years. Right? Fighting over it, talking about it. The two organizations that are active on college campuses are AMP, which is American Muslims for Palestine, and SJP. SJP is the one that's on college campus, but it doesn't actually exist. There's no organization. It's not a 501c3. There's no group. There are no offices. There's no officer, nothing. Their biggest proponent is AMP, American Muslims for Palestine. That organization was funded, created, established by groups and people that are connected to groups that in 2011 were found to be supporting Hamas. Financial support. I testified in front of Congress 3 times about this. It's all out in the open. So that is an entire strategy that's been waged against not just Israel, but literally democratic values, right? So that's been going on for about 30 years. The Jewish establishment in the United States, the Israeli government, the Jewish community brushed it off. So when I was talking about this 15 years ago, people were like, it's college kids. Everybody's a radical on college campus. They'll grow out of it. That's what I was told. And I saw the strategy. What they did was basically, here's the thing. When a university passes a anti-BDS law, right? What does that mean? Like a BDS law, like they're supporting BDS. What does that actually mean? I'll help. Nothing is the answer. It doesn't mean anything, right? They're just like, we support BDS. That's great. It doesn't actually mean anything. A lot of it gets struck down, and it doesn't actually mean anything even if it passes. But what they've been doing for a very long time is training the population to think that voting against a democratic country is even a possibility. So if they voted against it on college campuses, it's okay to vote against it in City Hall. It's okay to vote against it in Congress. Does that make sense? So this is what happened on October 8th, not October 7th, October 8th, because there was the atrocities of October 7th and then the shock of the atrocities of October 8th with the demonstrations and all the hate that was coming out, burst what was actually being created against us for a very, very, very long time. They're supporting all of these entities and all these powers that we were talking about before in the Middle East. And that's what's going on. All these organizations need to be outlawed. All of these names need to be exposed. And people need to understand that this is fundamentally anti-American, anti-West, and the Jews, as always, and Israel now, having turned into the Jew of the world. Did you get that? Israel turned into the Jew of the world, right? They used to say, it's fine, let's just get rid of the Jews and everything would be fine. Nobody can say that. But it's like, let's just get rid of Israel. Everything will be fine. That's what happened, right? We're just a pawn. There's a bigger picture here. There's a bigger game. Also, the word terrorism, I would refrain from using that because terrorism is not a goal in and of itself. Terrorism is a means to an end. And the goal is the thing that we need to talk about.
And here we have another, these are great points on what's going on what has been going on campus, and clearly has been very successful. And here's the last point that she makes, which is that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. You cannot separate Israel from the Jew. This is a very important point. A lot of people like to hide behind, and also liberal Jewish groups that are anti-Israel. They hide behind, I'm anti-Israel, not anti-Jewish. And what they're actually doing is they're self-destructing.
Let's go back to what you talked about a little bit earlier, and what word is used so much today, anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism. What do those terms actually mean? When someone says, I'm an anti-Zionist, but I'm not an anti-Semite, okay?
Cute.
Or I'm not against Israel, I'm just against everything it does. So
I'm not against Israel. I'm just against its existence.
So.
It's not, So I'm just gonna, do it very quickly because again, we need to wrap up. So first of all, let's be clear: anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. They're one and the same. We're clear on that.
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Fred. So here's the thing: anti-Semitism is not racism. So it's not racism because when you're racist towards somebody, you think that you're better than them. So they're below me. When you're anti-Semitic, it's a little bit of both. So you're punching down on somebody, but you're also punching up. So anti-Semitism is attributing to the Jews these mythological powers, and it's a shape-shifting conspiracy theory. So every few generations, it changes into something else. Sometimes it's racial, sometimes it's, religious-based, whatever. It turned into nation-based today, which attributes everything that's worse in society, where it used to be pinned on the Jews, now it's pinned on the Jewish state. So what are the worst things about society today? It's colonialism, it's racism, right? And it's white supremacy. And lo and behold, these are all the things that are pinned on Israel, which I can, break down very easily. So that's what happened, and that's what they're conflating. Anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism are one and the same. When people say to me, I'm not anti-Semitic, I'm not anti-Semitic, I'm just an anti-Zionist, I usually ask them which other countries they would like to dismantle. Because there's only one country in the world that her existence is being questioned. There's only one country in the world that gets attacked so severely and savagely on October 7th, but when it defends itself, people say, well, don't defend yourself that well. Just please pull back on the defending yourself a little bit. So Israel has the right to defend itself, but it doesn't have the right to win? Which other country are you debating? Does anybody debate the existence of Russia right now? Nobody said Russia did a bad thing, therefore Russia should not exist. That conversation doesn't exist. That conversation only exists when you are talking about the world's single Jewish state. And the problem with anti-Semitism being a shape-shifting conspiracy theory, that it's like the water you swim in. So people don't even see that. They just think that IDF and the Zionists are just the worst.
Brilliant points. That anti-Semitism is very different than racism because it's not looking down, it's actually looking up. And the fact that there is no other country that people say, condemn and feel it needs to be dismantled, while we don't hate the people, right? There's no other country that you believe should be dismantled. Noah Tishby is very articulate. She hits the nail on the head. And her comments here are very, very helpful in getting the truth out, and every single one of us needs to know these points very well when we communicate.